Okay, it's obviously good to see everybody. I think this is my first talk with an audience since like 2 years. Yeah. So I wanted to do this talk because I see that there's a lot of misconceptions about how to run security. I mean, I know it sounds arrogant, and maybe it is a little bit. Some of you who know me know that I'm a very humble person. Okay. But we're not going to go through all the CIS controls and all the pen tests and all the things that you normally do in any security group or in any organization, but more I want to kind of run through some unorthodox or tough to swallow pills when it comes to running security. I'm going to skip through about me just to tell you that I was a bit defender for about 18 years. And since May 2022, I'm running security with an awesome team for the Superbet group and Happening XYZ. Because we don't have a lot of time and we have a lot of stuff to cover, so I'm going to kind of rush through a few things, right? So, about the group. So, about 4,500 employees, 10 countries, no battery. We have a number of companies under the group's umbrella, and this is an important thing to keep in mind because each company kind of comes with their own can of worms. I don't think I'm going to just stick to being here because of the battery. And the Happening XYZ, because many have asked me, is the new engine. Can we turn this on? Okay. So, Happening XYZ is the new engine that powers the technology behind the Superbet group. Disclaimers. We will not talk about how to cheat at slot machines and sports betting and clickbait, brothers. I know I said place your bets, and everybody's like, oh my God, we're going to learn how to cheat. No. We're not going to learn how to handle cheating and cheaters and how we break their hands and crush their feet and whatnot like you've seen in casino. We're not going to talk about the inner workings of how we place odds and all that stuff. To be honest, I actually have very little idea. I have never even set foot in one of those agencies or whatever. I've never placed a bet in my life. I did play in Vegas, which is like unavoidable. And we're not talking about, again, SOC 2, ISO 27001, CIS controls, and boring conversation anyway. We will talk about challenges, technical challenges and political challenges, because when you want to implement new policies, especially tough to swallow policies, you're going to face resistance. And we're going to talk about, again, concepts that some of you will find controversial, but my hope is that it will either, shed a new light on things for you, or it will empower you to go back and say, I knew it, and this is some more ammunition that I can take back home with me and use it to talk to the guys that are resisting what I'm trying to tell them. Again, about the group. Very important, engineering teams in most countries. We have a few technology hubs, very siloed. Okay, so because we acquire a number of companies, and we're going to probably keep acquiring new companies. So one of the bigger challenges is how do we keep our sanity in managing the security for, while we ingest new companies and making sure that they're going to be safe as well, and do it in a predictable fashion and without bothering them too much. So again, some of the entities are very autonomous, and they want to keep their autonomy. So this is our main objective, to be able to manage the security for all of these companies, to be able to, do it in an efficient way, predictable way, and most importantly, don't bother the users very much, because developers are prima donnas. They don't want to change their way of life. They have some preconceptions. I'm going to say a few things, and some of the developers in the audience are going to go like, nope, I don't want to do that. And yeah, it's a tough job. This is a structure. We have what we call a green team. handling compliance. Their job is to make sure that everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing. So any policy that we push, any new policy, any new concept that we want people to be aware of, the job of the green team is to transform it into a policy and communicate it internally. We have a blue team. The blue team obviously handles pretty much straightforward defenses and incident response. Not going to bother you too much with this. And we have a red team. And these are the actual people on the team. I think they're around here somewhere. Okay? A very important thing about the red team. The red team, in our case at least, operates with a rogue mentality. Rogue mentality is something that's a luxury for red teams in most organizations. In most organizations, red teams have to announce when they hack something, or when they pen test something, or when they try to do something with the system. We have managed to kind of get agreement across the board to allow the red team free will, free reign, and acting like a completely rogue element with inside information. So anything that they want to do, anything that they want to shoot, they are allowed to shoot. Okay, so license to hack pretty much. And I strongly encourage you to kind of try to push this mentality, because obviously hackers will not play by the rules. So an important aspect of the red team is to think like a hacker, obviously, and push the boundaries and the limits of the engineering and the blue teams and all the other teams in the organization, push their limits towards being resilient against real-life attacks, not just simulations, internet simulations. So first, very important takeaway, rogue mentality and free reign for the red team. If you don't do this, you're going to have a less resilient security posture. The most underrated team, and one of the key elements about keeping our sanity, is the compliance team. They're like the most boring unit ever. They write those ugly documents with policies that nobody bothers to read. But it's the most important unit in the organization about keeping our sanity. Anybody that can tell me why, or at least show of hands? I know they're boring, so nobody, one hand raised. I know they're boring. Well, they're the unit that kind of enables everybody in the group. So in all the 4,500 employees, I don't know how many, I literally don't know how many companies we have. They're the ones that tell them how things should work. And they're the ones that are supposed to design those documents in a way that are easy to understand and easy to adopt by everybody else. So when we say stuff like, we want SSO everywhere, or we want, WAFs everywhere, or pen test before anything goes in production, all of these things need to be documented and communicated internally. And this communication is probably the most important aspect about anything we do, not just in security, but in most of the actions that we do. This internal communication and predictability and allowing the other departments to know what we're doing is one of the most important aspects, because nobody likes surprises. Nobody likes to wake up with whatever new software on their computer or whatever new limitations at the perimeter and so on and so forth. One of the key elements of running a successful green team is having a shorter version of those long, shitty documents. So there's the shitty document with a version number, with approval stamp, with whatever, that, again, nobody reads. And we keep a shorter version of that, of a too long didn't read version on Notion, or whatever Confluence, Wiki you have internally. So make sure that you always have a short version of all the policies. Second, any policy that you have should apply to the entire group. I mean, and this is a particular case for us, because, again, multiple companies. So if you have just one company, then yeah, you have a policy for the whole company. But if you have multiple companies, you have to make sure that the policies that you have can be applied to all the entities in the group. Otherwise, you're going to have to kind of work a lot more to maintain policies for more entities. I've had this conversation a million times. Many people don't believe in doing something because there's a chance that it's not going to work. I'm sure you've seen it, I'm sure you've thought about it, and you've been discouraged about doing something because there's a chance that, people will not adopt it. That's not true. As it turns out, the most important part is this communication part. So don't focus on trying to enforce the policies. Trust me, if you communicate them properly, enforcing them is going to be easy. Because once you communicate a policy, like, I don't know, no more SSH, or no more password-based SSH, let's say, okay? I'm sure that none of you use passwords for SSH, but just in case. So you communicate that, and then you're going to have like 60% adoption rate on that policy. And then what you're going to do is you're going to use the red team to hunt down the heretics that do not follow the policy. It's as simple as that. Tickets in whatever ticketing system, hey, you done screwed up, you didn't read that, do it, or give me a deadline when you're going to do it. So do not focus on enforcing the policy. It's a useless effort, and it's going to demoralize a lot of people and yourself. Focus on making sure that everybody knows about it, on getting challenges on it, and getting people to challenge you. I don't want to do it, or something like that. Do those debates, and then you're going to have at least 60–70% adoption rate and people following that policy and respecting that policy. Again, with the green team, any change that you make in the lifestyle of developers, users, whatever, has to be communicated at least 1 month in advance. I have been in the awkward situation, and I'm sure most of you have within your organizations, to see new changes on your computers, on your networks, and not knowing about them. It's the most frustrating thing ever, as I'm sure you know. So it's a simple thing. Make sure that you communicate 1 month in advance for any changes that you make. Host webinars, ask me anything. I'm doing a few times a year, I'm doing an AMA with the whole group. So we gather questions on Slido, and then we address them to interact with the people. This interaction is very important. And last but by no means least, keep a public page on, again, Wiki, Notion, Confluence, whatever, with all your plans. So right now we're doing pen testing on those assets, and right now we're getting a GRC platform. We're enforcing, WAFs everywhere, and CDNs, and whatever else. So this public page will help the engineers, the newly onboarded people, all your other peers, all the people that you need in order to achieve your goals. This public page will enable them to know what we are doing and keep it updated, obviously, at all times. So always have updated policies and playbooks so every entity in the group knows what's expected of them, because otherwise you're going to say, okay, I want you to enable, whatever, Cloudflare Fastly, what you want to enable on your front internet assets, and they're going to say, where's the playbook? Well, where does it say that I need to do that? So that's the objective of the Green Team, internal communication and making sure that people know what's expected of them. Now, another element to keep your sanity, and this is one of the controversial ones. Everybody talks about cloud first, but the scale of cloud first that we want to do is more than most of the people that I've talked to. Everything should be externalized to trusted providers. So, an example, eliminate the local Active Directory. Eliminate anything that's on-premise as much as possible. I'm actually working with IT to draft a policy to kill any ports, any file and print sharings, VNC, RDP, all of these things. And you're going to get pushback on that because people are going to say, yeah, but I need that RDP to do whatever. Replace it with TeamViewer. I need to do to access the printer. Okay, cloud printing. So you're going to get, I have some dependencies internally that work with LDAP and the local Active Directory. Okay, change it with something that adapts to 2022. It's 2022, we shouldn't have local networks and Active Directory anymore. Out of curiosity, how many people agree with this particular topic? So no Active Directory on-premise. Come on. It's just a kind of, we're at a security conference. Do we not know in how many ways Active Directory can be exploited? From all the tickets, Kerberos things, it's like a trove for any hacker. Pick a strong identity provider, and we're going to talk about SSO. Essentially, one of the bigger problems that you notice is shadow IT. Shadow IT, for those of you who just opened the television, is that moment when somebody opens their own service within the organization and it's not sanctioned, it's not controlled. Nobody knows what's happening with that service. So it has its own password, maybe a PHP myadmin, why not? Because it's still a thing in 2022. So SSO everywhere and a strong identity provider enables you to have one point of control for all employees. You can fire them there. You can onboard them there. You can set rules to say which assets they're allowed to access. And last but by no means least, you're mitigating shitty passwords because you have only one place where they authenticate only once in the identity provider, and then they're authenticated for everything in the organization. Maybe you have vSphere, or maybe you have Jenkins, or maybe you have whatever other, Elasticsearch, Kibana, all the stuff that you have should be SSO enabled. So users don't have to have like separate passwords for a business application. They should only log on once into identity provider, can be Google, Okta, Azure, whatever you want, and then they're authenticated everywhere. Otherwise, I guarantee you, some user will have shitty passwords and they will get hacked with credential stuffing attacks. Outsource as much as possible. Again, a tough pill to swallow. Companies, especially in Romania, like DIY. They want to build stuff themselves because it's cheaper. But I'm going to actually have a slide dedicated just for this. It's not cheaper. It sounds cheaper because it's like operational costs only, but it's definitely not cheaper. I'm going to touch on it on the next slide. I mentioned earlier, eliminate the need for any kind of endpoint dependency. So interconnectivity on the local network should be non-existent. I know people tell you this in all the presentations at all the security conferences. They tell you, oh my God, zero trust and no more private network, cloud first, cloud only. I'm saying it again. It's so important because the local network gives you, and again, I know it's a cliche, a false sense of security. And that's definitely wrong because the insider threat is not, it's real. Twitter, I mean, I'm thankful, I'm sorry for Twitter, but I'm thankful that they got hacked because it's a story that I can use now to kill the local network. And this is a politics thing. In most of my life, I've faced the challenge of talking to people and they telling me, we're going to do it like this because this is what we can do. These are the current capabilities of the organization. These are the current capabilities of our engineering team. And we're going to do it like this because we cannot do it any other way. But as it turns out, if you challenge that and brainstorm about finding a new way of doing things, you're going to be successful. And people are just, how should I put it, demoralized, and they don't want to do it because they feel that, we know that it cannot be done. My advice to you is do not get demoralized, fight the good fight, and try to find creative way to overcome and get to the year 2022, where you can do things the way they should be done, not the way they can be done. And I promise you that if you challenge the peers that tell you that it cannot be done, you're going to find a way to do it. If anything, you can relate to standards, to all the standards worldwide. There's definitely a company that does it right. You can follow their example. I'm doing it. I'm not a creative person. Well, a little bit. But whenever I'm kind of puzzled about something, I look, okay, how does Adobe do it? Or how does Facebook do it? Or how does Google do it? Or how does another company do it? They may not do everything right, but at least one particular aspect is something an example that I can follow. In my small world, if you have to think, you're doing it wrong, okay? And if you are limited by what can be done, you're also doing it wrong. There's a way to do things that's a standard and it works and it should be adopted, and you should make the case for doing it right, not just enough. Because otherwise, obviously, you're going to get into a lot of debt, and you're not going to be able to scale with the company. You're not going to be able to support the company in scaling. And as I was saying, DIY. DIY is just arrogance in believing that you can do something right. Again, I know it sounds controversial. I don't mean to offend anybody, but this is the truth. Your version 1 will never be on par with an off-the-shelf solution. And then you have productivity cost because it's going to be, well, not as great as the golden standard in the industry. You're going to have maintenance costs because it's going to have a lot of bugs. You're going to have to allocate people to fix them. You're going to have security costs because it's going to be some PHP crap that somebody thought it was a good idea. I know that I know for a fact that many of you relate to this, okay? And last but by no means least, people love expensive stuff. People love efficient tools. If you have your expenses done in Excel or some stuff that some developers build in-house for doing expenses versus Expensify, Raido, I don't know, what else. People are going to love saying, oh my God, you have like that shitty application or Excel, we have Raido, or we have Expensify. And people are going to love working for your company because they're going to see that other companies don't have such efficient processes as they do. So it actually, having an off-the-shelf, initially expensive solution will help employee retention, will have a lower total cost of ownership, will have a lower maintenance cost, and lower risk to the business. So even though you have to pay $100,000 now, you're going to have lower costs in the long run, in the 2-3 years, because if you do it internally, you're going to have a much bigger cost when you get hacked, when people are going to hate it, when you're going to have to allocate additional time to put some additional sensors or firewalls in front of it because it sucks. So again, unpopular opinion, but I'm a firm believer that if it's not your core IP, you should not develop it. Business apps in-house developed is wrong. It's pure and simple. Many of you will hate this, but it's me here telling my opinion. Okay, taking strategy to stay sane. SSO everywhere. I've mentioned this earlier. If you have to maintain logins, multiple logins, it's just putting out fires. If you enable SSO everywhere, you're just going to have an easier time. You're going to reduce your time spent by 50%, I guarantee it. Has to be enforced. Many applications will not support SSO initially. Your developers will have to build some wrapper on top of it, some cognito, some whatever technology that will enable the interaction between that application and SSO. And eventually, if there's no way to integrate it with SSO, kill it and get a modern one. Again, you're going to say it's tough, you're going to say it's expensive, and I'm going to challenge that by saying if you make a strong business case, you should be able to secure the budget for it, or kill it for security reasons and risk. Another way to stay sane, CDN, WAF, and strict origin everywhere. Any internet-facing asset should be behind CDN, WAF, and have strict origin. Is there anyone here that doesn't understand what strict origin means? So I know if I have to explain it. Okay, good. If you implement these very simple rules, you're going to have definitely an easier time managing the security of the organization. Because if you don't, then you're going to have people brute forcing stuff, credential stuffing, DDoS attacks, which happen on a daily basis, all of the good things and bad things that would be mitigated if you just spend a little effort initially to have all of these things implemented and communicated, work with the engineers, and then rest. And just as a perk, we're moving towards TLP. There's document classification, which is document classified, internal use only, and in my opinion, this is not a standard at this point, the way those things. I've seen presentations at conferences that said confidential at the bottom, which is like ridiculous. I mean, if it's confidential, why are like 1,000 people and streaming over the internet? TLP, red, amber, and green, is like the simplest way, and it's an actual standard of classifying communication. Red, recipient only. Amber, recipient and colleagues. Green, it's public domain. It's standardized, it has references everywhere, and it's easy to implement. This is TLP green. Vulnerability management, obviously an important part. These are part of the tools that we're using. The red team uses, as they like to say it, what hackers use, which would be re-engine, nuclei, and a number of other tools. We got external sources that monitor our attack surface, like Detectify. and a number of automated scanners that constantly scan all of our assets, and then we have manual pen testing, and then we have a process to do manual explorative pen testing with our red team. Well, in this case, you need to kind of have an SLA with your engineers, time to fix, ideally less than 24 hours for P1s. They're going to hate it, but they're going to agree to it, and so on and so forth. Last but by no means least, bug bounty. How many people here have bug bounty programs in their companies? Way too few. Way too few. There is no way, shape, or form in which your security team is going to be able to find everything. You will never find everything. You will never be able to secure everything, which is why hundreds of thousands of researchers crowdsourced through Bugcrowd, HackerOne, or even if you run it on your own website, will show you just how little you know about your infrastructure. The fundamental definition of a blind spot is that you don't know about it. And trust me, we all have a shit ton of blind spots. There is no way to quantify how many we have until there's bug bounty programs that tell us, and there's like researchers that show us, okay, so here's the thought, here's the thing that you didn't know. And trust me, you're going to be so thankful when you start interacting with those researchers. Also about keeping sane. Many people ask about bring your own device. It's the simplest of things. You set up a policy in which you say, if a device has the stack of technologies that we need, MDM, like Intune, Jump, whatever, EDR solution, and the sanity checks on the device, they're welcome to access the company resource. If they don't, they don't. It's as simple as that. It's a simple policy, and again, communicated properly, you have no need to worry about 4,500 endpoints anymore. You implement something that we call conditional access, and you make available the resources. If you want to install them yourself, here's the kits. Install them on any device that you want, and then you can access resources. IT can do it for you, you can do it for you, and me as a security manager, I don't have to care about it anymore. And there you go, problem solved about endpoint security and a shit ton of employees. It's a little bit awkward to implement because people are going to resist it, and they're going to say, I don't want to install your security tools on my laptop, but that's one of the areas where you have to make a stand and say, in that case, I cannot allow you to access company resources on a computer that's potentially compromised. If you're subscribed to dark web notifications, you can see how many password stealers and information from password stealers are published there on a daily basis. Like hundreds of thousands of computers harvested, their Chrome passwords or whatever, Steam passwords harvested, corporate passwords harvested and sold on the dark web. And this is your argument. I cannot allow you to access company resources from a computer that can be infected with password stealers. It's as simple as that. Publish the policy, publish the links to the tools. This is how you install them, tutorials, and then, bam, you don't have to care about endpoint security anymore. For the blue, sensors, sensors, sensors everywhere. You cannot protect what you cannot see. At this point, what you should ask yourselves, if there's somebody in my infrastructure, if there's somebody brute forcing an endpoint, if there's somebody trying to do, I don't know, an EDOR, or an LFI, an SQL injection on one of my internet-facing assets or one of my assets, would I know about it? And prioritize the low-hanging fruits, the assets that you know are compromised or shit, and make sure that you have visibility everywhere, and run exercises to ensure that everything is logged and you have visibility in your Splunks or whatever CM you want to use. And by no means least, make sure that you are ready for forensics and incident response. That means logs everywhere. Maybe an endpoint of yours gets hacked. Maybe you're lucky and gets hacked by your red team. And you go to see, you want to see if anybody else exploited that vulnerability. Maybe it was a trivial to exploit vulnerability. And then you wake up that you only have 30 days worth of logs. And the vulnerability was there for 7 years. Can you guarantee that nobody else exploited it? No. So make sure that you log everything in a central place. You can use S3 buckets, and make sure that you are able to do forensics and incident response if you need to. the most lovely part of my job, legacy. The amount of times I've heard, for history reasons or legacy, it's pretty much the amount of time Elon Musk has heard about Donald Trump coming back to Twitter. I think it's a fair assessment. You have to live with it. There's no way to escape it. Legacy is there, it's there to stay. Your approach to that is going to be ask for a roadmap, because everybody's going to tell you, yeah, we're moving everything to Amazon, and we're doing some new architecture, and it's awesome. Ask for a roadmap and keep following that roadmap. That's going to be one of the efforts that you're going to have to do some project management with, or at least have somebody do it, Ask for a clear roadmap of that phasing out. It can be 2 months, it can be 2 years, and then isolate those services because they are a risk to the organization. Make sure that if they get hacked, the attacker will not be able to pivot. And then put everything on it. WAF, even EDR solution, even antivirus, I don't care. Even if it's Linux, put some antivirus, EDR, put all the stuff, anything that you can put on it to make sure that if it gets hacked at some point, you will see that moment coming. And of course, once you do that, you're going to have to keep a list on shitty things that you're going to have to keep a closer eye on. And of course, this brings us to, there is no such thing as security by design. Whenever I hear this, I say that it's a stupid thing to consider. Sorry if I'm offending anybody. I mean, there's no such thing as secure by design because things get hacked every day. All those secure by design things get hacked every day, and there's like new creative ways to hack stuff. But if you think about it as compromised by design, then you have a new outlook on things. And this is, in my opinion, the definition of zero trust. So, cancel. So people with Cisco at RSA said that zero trust is VPN. Mind-blowing. Now, zero trust is believing that things are compromised by design. This is zero trust. If one employee would do something stupid, would you see it? So treat each asset, including people, as if it was already compromised. And try to kind of tailor all the actions and all the tools and all the technologies to be able to pick up on the moment when a compromised asset does something. And with this mindset, of course, tailor least privilege access. It's also going to be a challenging thing to do because you might see that in some engineering units, people do not do this. You're going to have to work a little bit on this to make sure that you review their policies, you review the way they access systems, and with them together tailor least privilege access. Nobody should have access to more than they need to have access to. So in case they get compromised, they cause the least possible damage. Because again, people don't believe, it's 2022 and people don't believe that they will get hacked. You will get hacked. Some of your computers, some of your employees, some of your colleagues, maybe you, will get hacked. Constantly run tabletops and simulations, have your blue team run what-if scenarios with leaders, with engineers. If this would happen, how would we handle it? You should do it at least, I don't know, 3 times a year. Ideally, you should do it once a month, once every 2 months, tabletops. And of course, run purple team exercises. Have your red team play, as usual, the bad guy, the rogue attacker, without notifying anybody, playing bad jokes, and then try to see if your blue team spots them. And if they don't, then you know you have something to do and you have something to fix. It's a simple thing to communicate, and it's a difficult thing to kind of implement. But it's an important thing to do. Because if your red team can interact with the system and mess around with it and maybe hack it, and your blue team doesn't see that particular event, then you know you have a problem. And I don't know how many of you do this, but if you don't, you should start doing it, or your teams should start doing it. Phishing exercise is pretty much straightforward. We ran a number of campaigns in the group. They were really, really evil. And of course, we had more engagement and more conversion in our phishing campaigns than our marketing team has on their marketing campaigns. And as I was saying, be brutal. Do not be afraid to be brutal, because hackers will be brutal. Threat actors will be brutal, and you should emulate threat actors. Okay. there will always be a way to bypass anything that you've put in place in terms of defenses. Do not forget that. And running as many of these exercises as possible will build up your resilience. Resilience is not done by tooling. Resilience is not gained by antivirus, CDRs, and WAFs. Resilience is gained by conflict, constant conflict. It's the only sure way to build resilience. So this is pretty much it. I think that I'm out of time. Or I want to leave you. Wait. I mean, the one takeaway from this is build stuff that's abstract and works for everybody, number one. Communicate as much as possible. If you have the processes available for everybody and you communicate them internally, people know what to do, then you're going to have less stuff to do because you don't need to do it for them. And, okay, now you can clap.
Thank you very much, Jay. We still have 5 minutes for questions. So maybe a question up here at front.
Hey, Jay.
Hey, guys. Lucian.
I have two questions. One is related to adopting cloud, well, services and applications. That's what the slide was mostly focused on, right? Are you also an advocate for SASE, which is Service Access Secure Edge, which is also moving networking controls, networking itself through SD-WAN and networking controls, as well as security controls and all the past security things that appliances or boxes used to do, the firewall, all those things. Those are now moved in the cloud, like Cloudflare One. There's other vendors out there building such solutions where everything's in the cloud, not just the applications.
I think we can take this offline because there's too much noise.
Okay, yeah.
Do we have any other questions?
Yep, just one quick question here.
Okay.
So you suggested that we check how other companies approach their security. But how do you do this, considering that many companies are quite secretive about how they approach security?
That's an excellent question. They shouldn't be secretive about it. We just did a presentation about it. And get some friends in the other companies, or get my business card.
So the third takeaway from this talk is get Jay's business card.